Hi, I'm Gil Moore from Triumph, and on behalf of Rick Emmett and Mike Levine and myself, we're really proud to be this year's ambassadors for Record Store Day here in Canada. You know, when I got interested in music, my buddies and I in the neighborhood, we had a pilgrimage pretty much every weekend. On Saturday morning, we'd all get to the bus station and get ourselves downtown. And here in Toronto, we had Sam the Record Man on Yonge Street, which was the record store that was the be-all, end-all of vinyl. And, you know, we would parse through, you know, all these records, primarily blues records, mostly 45s at the time, looking for songs that we had heard, you know, on the limited amount of airplay that this kind of music, that blues music, was getting in Toronto at the time. And we'd always get excited when we, you know, find a record, find a song by an artist, most of them from the southern US at the time, that we were looking for. And we go home and practice it. That's how our bands would start. The bands that we followed that were a little older, that were playing blues music, we chase them around from gig to gig here in the local market. And that's how you learn to play. So it wasn't very sophisticated. It was pretty ragtag. My mom had she had a turntable. My mom and dad had some 78s, which are really old records, from back in the 40s and probably the early 50s. And so that was my turntable of choice in my parents' basement. Wasn't very sophisticated, but that's where those first 45s would go on, and that's what got me started playing drums. So I thought maybe I'd share with you, you know, a few of the albums and a few of the artists that I thought were influential. And eventually, you know, when I met Mike Levine and Rick Emmett, Mike was a bit of a bluesman. Rick not so much. Rick came from a kind of a different background musically than Mike and I, but Mike and I shared a lot of the stories about the blues musicians and some of the affectations of the playing that went along with it. So I'm going to start with these guys right here, Booker T and the MGs. To me, this is like foundational stuff. Al Jackson on drums, when I first heard him, I think that's when it dawned on me that, you know, the primary focus of a drummer should be to keep time, as he did. And, you know, that was the first time I really heard that big, bad, groaning B3 organ. And, you know, this album's called Green Onions. It's one of the tracks on here, which I would recommend to anybody. It's a magic piece of music. And all the musicians on here at the time, they all sort of, they were Memphis-based, and Stax Volt Records produced a lot of great artists. Sam and Dave, these were two of my absolute favorites here, and you know, their big kind of breakthrough song was "Hold On, I'm Coming," which I must have played 8 million times in my parents' basement, I would say, primarily. But it was a great way to learn feel, because as kids we listened to Al plays on a lot of these tracks here, if not all of them, and we discovered what we called the New Orleans beat, which was just a little funky, sort of a fatback rhythm that we were discovering as, you know, 13, 14-year-old kids. So I love this record, still love this music today. I still play this stuff, by the way. Not necessarily on vinyl, but when I can, this is the way to listen to it. You know, a little bit later, you know, after I got beyond the blues, I started to work on playing some rock. And, you know, this is a very, very pivotal piece of vinyl right here. This record by Jimi Hendrix is kind of like, again, it's a fundamental album for anybody interested in the history of music. And Jimmy was a blues guitar player. Like if you listen to Purple Haze and Foxy Lady and so on, you're hearing Albert King and, others, mixed in there. So Jimmy and Mitch Mitchell, wow, what a combo, what a guitar player, what a drummer. Took me on quite a ride, experientially, learning some of these songs. What do we got on here? We got Manic Depression, I played that, played Hey Joe, played Foxy Lady, played Purple Haze, of course. All these songs are great songs. I love that record. My dear friend Leslie West just passed away about 3 weeks ago, and I first saw Leslie. Mountain was playing with Rod Stewart and the Small Faces, and Leslie came on stage. I'll never forget it. And I don't think many people know that Mountain was really part of the name. Corky Lang let me know was because Leslie was so huge at the time. Like he was probably 400 pounds, and he wore a little dinky hat on stage that looked like it was half as big as his head. And he had played a Les Paul Jr., which was really unusual, which looked like a toothpick in his hands. But, aside from, Mississippi Queen, which everybody knows, I mean, some of the songs like, Never in My Life on here and Silver Paper, I mean, these are like just fantastic. Theme from an Imaginary Western. I love every lick on this record, and I would recommend it to anybody to this day, whether you're trying to learn music and understand the history of rock music or just for great listening. A big turning point for me, I think, in my record collection, which could go on and on and on. Have millions of records, but this was another one I wanted to highlight, which was Machine Head by Deep Purple. So Ian Pace is my very, very favorite drummer of all time in the rock field. So I'll go on record in saying that about Ian Pace right here. And this record had a lot to do with it. Probably the most important piece of vinyl that came along in a lot of young musicians' lives, including me, Led Zeppelin 4, thinking about how Ian played a lot of the up-tempo stuff, and then you listen to John Bonham play rock and roll, which is cut number, I forget. I think it's the second cut on this record, and you hear somebody who again has a real soft feel. This starts off with Black Dog. I was wrong. Rock and Roll is second, but Black Dog, probably one of my favorite hard rock songs of all time, with the crazy rhythm changes in it. So make your way over to your local record store and parse through those beautiful vinyl records. Find some music that you want to fall in love with and turn it up loud. And all the best from myself, Mike Levine, and Rick Emmett. Triumph loves you. Thanks very much.